Knicks fans, wake up. You gotta wake up. We're too huge. We're too large. We're too massive of a force to all have the same opinions. All right? So go easy. There's people who want KP here, want KP back. I'm one of them. I say like he's done his time.
What did he say?
I'm not championing for him, but I'm saying if the New York Knicks pull that off and decide to bring Kristaps Porzingis back, I'm not opposed to it. He did his time in jail, okay? And ultimately it will be a situation where this front office, they've been on point in moving us forward, whether it's an inch or a mile. And keep in mind, we made it to the conference semifinals. We're not far away. So if they feel as if whatever move that they make brings back KP and that'll get us a step closer to our goal, then I'm all for it. Because this front office, they move stealthily. This front office moves in silence like real G's do. And they really haven't made any major missteps. You can call it for what it is. They really haven't made many major missteps. So I trust them with that. Now, with that being said, I want to welcome you back to Knicks Daily, baby. Welcome. Yes. I'm your host. My name is Shia. And if you're visiting for the first time, I want to thank you. Let you know that I appreciate you. Do me a favor, click that like button. Even more so, go to the subscribe button. I'm going to tell you ahead of time, you're going to love these videos and that you're going to enjoy being part of the SB community, the newly formed KD community, the KDC. Okay, we ain't talking about the snake. All right? Knicks Daily community. And for those of you who are returning, my SB community, you already know. Welcome back, baby. You know we roll deep. I can't do none of this without you. I want to thank you for sticking with me. I want to thank you for helping me grow this thing. We're going to be one of the most dominant Knicks channels on YouTube. Okay? But I appreciate you. And you know you can't have those people who support you, those people who vibe and rock with what it is you do. Whether or not they agree with you or not, respect is there. You can't have those people if you don't have the ops. And if you're watching this video and you the ops, I see you. I see you in the comment section. I see you click on but not engage. And guess what? You rocking with the best, baby.
I'm the greatest.
Y'all can't beat my ass though.
Welcome to my channel though. Friend or foe, we want the smoke. Okay? And what better place to let this team cook? The Knicks Deli, baby. So we're going to do all of that in the spirit of Knicks Daily today. For those of you who are new to my channel watching me for the first time, you get a sense of what we are in the regular season. For those of you who are returning, it's a little bit of nostalgia. We're talking about letting them cook today. Throughout the year, most of your experience has been looking at Knicks Twitter and seeing some Knicks fans say trust the process.
I give you this advice. Stay on the path.
Growth takes place over time. And then you have other Knicks fans who are saying, man, we're doing so good. We 1 or 2 players away. Let's make a move right now and do it. But I want to remind you all, the value in letting them cook, okay? What happens when you have players who are promising, all right? This isn't like yesteryear where we had players who we really loved because they were a folklore hero, such as Frank Ntilikina, all right? Or such as Kevin Knox or Cam Reddish. Fell in love with the potential, but they never realized it. This is a situation where we truly have young players that we drafted or that we traded for, and we invested time, money, games lost. And now we're starting to see the fruits of our labor, okay? And we're at a position now where we're in year 3 of this New York Knicks rebuild. And we're at a critical point where we can determine whether or not we continue to ride with these players and see what they become. Or do we trade them to try to make a move for a player that'll help fast track us to where we want to go? We're not far from where we want to go. So do we make a move to fast track for a player who can help launch us into that window, thus giving us a longer period of time to compete in the championship window? So for you Knicks fans who are on one side of the fence who say, what are y'all doing? Everybody's always window shopping. That's one view of it. All right. We seen that we can compete with anybody with this team. What happens if you make a move for another player, and where will that take us? Okay, you see the Miami Heat competing. Why not us? Why not us? We were the closest team other than Denver that people can look at and say we see ourselves beating them. So that's one side of it. And then there's the other side where there's a part of the fandom that says, yo, let them cook. We love our young guys. We don't want to make no moves. Let's ride this thing until the wheels fall off and see where it goes. All right? But I just wanted to point out that in the NBA, there is a history of teams who don't let players cook. I was reflecting on the NBA and many times in which there would be players who ultimately grew and developed in a different organization. And I had to think about teams like OKC. How sick did you have to be? How sick do you have to feel if you are the owner of the Oklahoma City Thunder and you had Russell Westbrook, KD, and you had James Harden on the same team? You had these boys on the same team. You had them competing in the Western Conference Finals, just falling short. And you had them young. All three of those players, Russell Westbrook, league MVP, holds the record for most triple-doubles in NBA history, a history maker. KD, multiple-time scoring champ, multiple-time world champ, MVP. James Harden, generational scorer, MVP. All three were on your team. But because you looked at the financials and you saw the talent, but you didn't want to meet what you wanted to meet in terms of your financial responsibility, then you moved on from them. And when you moved one out and the other two, then there was a little bit of an imbalance. And then ultimately, the other one moved on. And you had 3 MVPs budding on your roster, and you couldn't keep them. Another example, I think, are the Chicago Bulls. And it's the Chicago Bulls that had Derrick Rose at the point guard, Jimmy Butler on the bench, Paul Gasol, Brook Lopez, and Joakim Noah. Not to the level of OKC, but you had a young Jimmy Butler on your team. And he had to leave and go to a few teams, and you see what happens when he's fully in his bag. The confidence is at an all-time high. He's had that experience, and now this is close to the finished product of Jimmy Butler that you're going to see. And the Chicago Bulls had that next to Derrick Rose, who was still young, next to Paul Gasol, and a Brook Lopez, who is now one of the top centers in the NBA. Another team I think about, Boston Celtics. Right, I know Boston Celtics did pretty well, and they continue to do well. They got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but they also had Kyrie Irving. And it wasn't a situation in which they let him go. They was expecting him to re-sign. He left. But what are the possibilities had that team stuck together and figured out a way to play cohesively? You had Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum would have been won a championship by now if you would have just left it alone and let it cook. What about the Los Angeles Lakers, who had Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball? But Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, and Julius Randle were the young Lakers before LeBron got there. All of those players turned out to be pretty good. Julius Randle, if Julius Randle would have developed into who he is now with LeBron, who knows how much more improved his IQ would have been? Who knows what type of player he would have developed himself to be with a player such as LeBron next to him? He chose to move on. Lonzo Ball, you see the type of player he turned out to be prior to the injury. He was really a defensive monster. He really has a vision for the floor that not many players in the league have. Look at Brandon Ingram and what Brandon Ingram was able to develop into going into New Orleans. So all of these players, man, when given the time to cook and develop and get their experience, make a couple of rotations around the league, which means a few years of not only gaining confidence, but adding to your bag. Players retire, new players come in who don't have that same level of experience. And then you get the level of Super Saiyan confidence such as Jimmy Butler has. In a player like RJ, in a player like Quentin Grimes, in a player like Emmanuel Quickly. 2 or 3 years away from putting their names up there as multiple-time All-Stars, as maybe a most improved player of the league. So there is value when you let your team cook. Let them boys cook. So what I want to do today is I want to take a look at our team. I want to talk about the value in letting each of these players cook. I'm going to do it Knicks Deli style. Okay? So let's look at the bacon, egg, and cheese. And then the bacon, egg, and cheese right now is going to represent 3 of the main players on this team, right? And what do I think will happen if we let them cook? So for Jalen Brunson right now is the best player on our team. He is manna from heaven. He has been a godsend for the New York Knicks. Because ultimately what he did was he checked off one of the boxes in terms of a superstar impact level type of player that the New York Knicks have been looking for. A player whose shine is so bright that it'll attract other players to a market like ours. We've been waiting for him, and he has arrived. So the value in Jalen Brunson being with us right now is that we do have a player who has shown you he will show up in big spots. He has the ability to lift his team. He has the ability to take over games. He has the ability to be consistent in the regular season and in the postseason. And that he has the respect of players from around the league. He doesn't necessarily have the respect of the writers and the coaches yet, apparently. But you know he has the respect of other players from around the league. So that's one who checks off the box. You want at least 3 of those players on your team. So we got one. Let's look at the second. The second, who is the egg? The egg is Julius Randle. If we were to decide to keep Julius Randle, several things has to happen. We need to add another player to this team. We need to add another player to this team. There needs to be another player who is of equal quality or greater than Jalen Brunson. Because what we can't have going into next season with Jalen Brunson is the responsibility placed on the shoulders of Jalen Brunson to not only have to carry the team physically but mentally. That has to be a shared responsibility, and it's best if it's shared amongst your team. It has to be a shared responsibility. It cannot all fall on Jalen Brunson. He's going to burn out. So can we get a player in here? Can a player emerge? Julius Randle does not have the capacity to change at this point. How many years has he been in the league? Physically and talent-wise, and his game has evolved and developed. But his ability, his maturity, his mental health is slower than the development of his game. That's just a fact. That's a pure fact. So we need to get another player who is equally as confident, equally as team-oriented and humble, but maybe whose talent affords him a little bit of room and space to have a little bit of a confident, arrogant swagger about himself. This is why I made the video on a KP, folks. This is why people's names such as KP is out there. This is why KP himself is posturing for the opportunity to be able to consider coming back to the New York Knicks, because he's coming to a space where he knows he has a connection with the fans. He's played in the market. He was drafted by us, so he knows how that's going to turn out. He probably still has a place out there. He knows that there's a Latvian community out here. Okay? But more importantly, he's played with Jalen Brunson before. He's played with the best player on the team before. So he looks at that and he knows, as a point guard, I already have a player in place who knows where my spots are, where I love to spot up and shoot or whatever. We already have a rhythm and a chemistry that we begin to establish. Now, the thing about bringing KP in and still having Julius Randle is, yes, it would bump Julius Randle to the third option. And I say that because not necessarily the points or more, but physically, Kristaps Porzingis has an advantage over many people who he'd be playing against. Consistently, he's there, he'll knock down the shot, and many people may say, well, Julius will be there. He'll be available. Well, that'll be good. That'll be something else we have as a feather in our cap. But at the time that Kristaps will be available, he's going to be a nightmare for somebody else. It was a nightmare for us trying to guard him this season when he gets rolling. KP is at the point now where he's cooked. He's a near finished meal. And I think him coming back to New York, a sense of home, a sense of comfort, a sense of closing that circle, the prodigal type of son type of situation, I think ultimately that's going to set him even further along. That's going to give him even more confidence to step in to his thing and help us go to that next level. It's what he's always wanted, to be part of having turned this thing around. That's why people are considering KP. I understand y'all talking about injury prone. We're not going to be leaning on him to carry us to the promised land. We're leaning on him to be a valuable piece to helping us get there and finish the job. That's what we're doing. And ultimately, when you have players who can share the load, then there is no burning players out, because you have players who are going to be equally talented, who can help alleviate the responsibility for each other. That's how this works. When you got a mediocre team, then that's when you burn players out. Give Tom Thibodeau the tools and watch what he builds. He's already built a house, ice cream sticks before. So for you people who are like, man, Tom Thibodeau and all your Knicks fans who are talking about KP, the only reason I'm talking about him is because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Unrestricted free agent where he'll have a choice. There could be mutual decision whether or not we reconcile. It's not a situation where I'm talking about trading him and what we're going to get back and we got to send somebody out. I'm not saying that. If it's a situation where as an unrestricted free agent we put money towards him and somebody else got to go out to make it work. If the New York Knicks do their due diligence as they've shown they have all these years with this regime, and they feel comfortable enough, having done all of their protocols, all of their checks, all of the doctors, bringing KP in here, why not? Why not? He is almost a finished meal. You can see the type of season he had in DC. He's almost a finished meal. He is a veteran in this league. He knows who he is in this league. He is nearly cooked. And contrary to what you believe, he's still a unicorn. In terms of his size and his stature, what player comparison does he have? When he came out, his player comparison was Dirk. Dirk is a legend. KP is not far from it. I mean, KP, let me not get ahead of myself. But in terms of his potential and his contribution, etc., he clearly can do for us what Dirk was able to do in that championship year, where he gets his game to the point where on any given night he's a mismatch for the person that's defending him. I think Jalen Brunson is entering his prime, and I think the player comparison coming out of Villanova, I think the player comparison was very disrespectful for him. He wasn't projected to be like an all-star level type of player. But if we were thinking in terms of this Jalen Brunson that we see now, when he's fully cooked, who is his NBA comparison? Damon Stoudemire? I see a little bit in terms of footwork. I think he got footwork similar to Kyrie. He just don't have Kyrie handles. But I think the only person in the league who has footwork like Jalen Brunson is Kyrie Irving. And I think in terms of being fully cooked, who is Jalen Brunson when he's fully in his bag, in his prime, and ready to be unleashed on this league? I think it's going to be Jalen Brunson. I think when it's all said and done, once he's in his prime, if he has the right players around him, then there'll be people making NBA comparisons to him. So that's what I hope to see from our bacon in this bacon, egg, and cheese. Now, who I hope to see from the egg, Julius Randle. I think Julius Randle right now is in his prime. If if he can locate consistency, I think he'll be a more athletic. Karl Malone is a Hall of Famer. Chris Webber is a Hall of Famer. I think he would be a more athletic Dollar Tree Karl Malone. If we find a way, now keep in mind, y'all, everybody's talking about moves that need to be made or whatever have you. This is the first season that this team has played with a real point guard. This is the first season this team has played with a real point guard. But many of you are trying to move people out, and you're making these judgments and these determinations about Randall and Emmanuel Quickly or whoever. This is the first season with a point guard leading your team. Moving forward, figuring out the plays, on the fly all season. It just feels like we've been doing this together for a number of years. But this is our first year with Jalen Brunson, a true point guard. So imagine what it's going to be like for Julius a second year. Imagine those summer league runs this year now with Brunson and Julius. We ain't losing to no team off the street. Now bring a KP and put him next to Randall. The only challenge that I have with the idea of that is that if you think it was bad between Obi and Randall every time the crowd chanted Obi's name, then don't let it be a situation where, the prodigal son is returned. KP drafted by the team, and then he gets cheered in front of Madison Square Garden over Randall.
I ain't eating.
The reason the New York Knicks would need to move on from Randall is simply he disrupts the chemistry of the team. He disrupts the mood of the team. He disrupts the spirit of the team. When you got younger players in this league on the team who are challenging you to keep your head up, to stay engaged, to communicate better, to not block us out. The younger players who came in behind you have to do that for you. You don't need to be there. You're disruptive. And that's one of the reasons why I think because Randall's close to being fully cooked, I think he's going to be sent out. I do. I think the New York Knicks are done with this dish, and they're looking for something different. So in terms of the cheese of the bacon, egg, and cheese in this example is going to be R.J. Barrett. It's going to be R.J. Barrett. And what R.J. has shown is another step towards his development. He's shown that he had a shaky start in the regular season. Something funky was happening with his jump shot. And I think I think a lot of these players, as I said in my videos earlier in the season, a lot of these players were impacted by their names being in trade talks. That Donovan Mitchell trade was very close to happening. And it really impacted the mentality of a lot of these young players. A lot of these young players probably entered the season with a sense of distrust and instability. Not knowing, all right, is there going to be another trade? You're not afraid to put me in a trade scenario. I thought we were a family. I thought we were all love. So it took time for players to really reconcile in their minds that this is a business and that we need to focus on the present and that all I have in this game right now are my brothers. And that was the mentality, us against the world. And they rode with it. But there's going to be a lot of reflection this offseason and understanding that this is a business. But when it comes to R.J. Barrett, our cheese of the bacon, egg, and cheese, the third player of the three that are the most valuable on this team, I thought we saw R.J. figure out towards the end a little bit more consistency in the regular season. And I think R.J. does what he's always done. He has a tendency to show up in big spots. He didn't do it the first playoff go-around, but he damn sure did it this playoff go-around. And he stepped up and he showed his point guard, I can turn into one of those players that you can rely on when we're in the trenches. That's what he did. His play this offseason was a message to his point guard. I'm one of the people. I'm one of the young bucks that if we work together, you can rely on me. So I love that about RJ. I do think RJ really needs to work on those free throws. I think he really needs to work on finishing at the rim. He doesn't have the athleticism a lot of these players have. He got to work on his footwork. He got to work on his strength. And he really has to figure out a way to work on finishing at the rim. But do I believe RJ is fully cooked? I don't. I think RJ will take the path similar to Jimmy Butler. I know his comparisons coming out were Jimmy Butler, but it was also James Harden. I think he has so much to learn. I once heard an interview by Kobe Bryant. He says every summer he learns a new move that he adds to his repertoire. All right. So shout out to the bacon, egg, and cheese, Brunson, Randall, RJ. When fully cooked, that's who I think they can be. All right. Mitchell Robinson is a player that we drafted in the second round. Mitchell Robinson is a player who has worked to be consistent in his play. He really has put together 2 very solid seasons, last season and this season. Solid seasons where he was more available to us when we needed him. This year in particular in the postseason. He already set the field goal percentage record, developed his reputation as an offensive rebounding monster. He's at the point now where other teams are talking about it's almost impossible to get him out of the game and off the boards. And to the point now where people are talking trash to him to try to take him off his game, and he's returning it right back to him. What will be Mitchell Robinson when fully cooked? And I think when fully cooked, we're looking at Tyson Chandler. We're looking at Tyson Chandler. If you follow Tyson Chandler's trajectory, never formed a hook shot, never formed a jump shot, never. But he did what he does best. He was a rim runner. He was able to get on teams with good point guards who identified what his strengths were and helped maximize them. But he also made sure that he locked in and focused defensively. He was a monster on offensive boards. He was the one that really popularized the tap out or the tap back to the point that the NBA made it an official rebound if you tapped it to yourself or tapped it to a teammate. Okay? So that really got materialized with Tyson Chandler. But he also was able to play at a high level to the point where he was able to secure Defensive Player of the Year here with the New York Knicks and be the defensive anchor for a team that won a world championship. If fully cooked, and y'all leave him the hell alone, Mitchell Robinson can be our Tyson Chandler. He could be our Tyson Chandler. So shout out to the Dollar Slice, Mitchell Robinson, hopefully our Tyson Chandler. Emmanuel had a great season this season. It started off shaky. Once again, I believe it started off shaky because emotionally, he didn't know how to handle the fact that he was almost sent to Utah. That he legitimately had his name inside of talks bantered about, and that he was close to being sent to Utah. So when it came time for him to refocus on the season, and the Knicks front office looked at him and said, "My bad, bro. My bad." And he looked at them like, "Nah, son, nah, you wildin'." It took him a while to get on track. You could tell his spirit wasn't in it. His mind wasn't in it. Physically, his game wasn't in it. And then he hit a switch somewhere in the season. When he hit a switch somewhere in the season, he was just like, you know what, F that. No friends. Yo, I'm just going to punish the league. I'm going to get mine. I'm going to show them why you had the nerve to try to get rid of me. And ultimately, he started carrying that towards the end of the season. And then he realized that with his current style of play, level of play, he was in consideration for the 6th Man of the Year award, and he really balled out. And he really finished strong because he thought, you know what, there is an opportunity. Let me see what I can do. And he was only robbed of that award for a player because we caught injuries, and he had so many starts where he showed he had starter level talent. And they took that away from him in terms of his performances because he was doing it in the starting role against starters. As if that doesn't tell you that he is the 6th Man of the Year candidate. because we're able to put him in the starting lineup and still keep winning games. What better of an example do you have in terms of sixth man of the year? So I think when he didn't win the sixth man of the year award, I think that also disrupted him. So this is a first. He had a year first where he was in consideration for a major award, where he was close to being traded. And I think that carried into him in his performances in the playoffs, in the postseason. A year where he was really a major piece that the Knicks relied on in order to advance. So this is where this experience is accrued. It's accrued. It compounds. It's compound interest. And eventually it's going to pay dividends. So if we let Emmanuel Quickley cook, then I think what we can get from Emmanuel Quickley is a Lou Williams, because Lou Williams had a great career. So I don't want to diminish Lou Williams' contribution to the NBA game. But let's say Lou Williams for now. But I say quarter water for Deuce McBride, because I think there's still room for him to develop. I think he'll come in spurts and he'll be able to play with a lot of the team who are going to be the veterans, the starters, who are going to be the major people carrying a lot of the load to where it is we need to go. But I think he's going to be important to the team. He's going to be important to our success. But I think he still has, or maybe about 5 years to get to where it is he's going to be. For Deuce McBride, I think we're looking at a Marcus Smart. I think that would be, when fully cooked, I think that's going to be his NBA comp. He can win Player of the Year playing his particular style. He can be that relentless as a guard. No matter if he's undersized, he's still going to be able to play at a defensive Player of the Year level in this NBA. And he may end up being a starter on a team one day. So I think in terms of when fully cooked, what is Deuce McBride? I think we're looking at a Marcus Smart. I think that's a great NBA comparison for him. Now I got, lastly, hot off the grill, if we let him cook, playing a good role for us in the future, Isaiah Hartenstein. I think Isaiah Hartenstein found his niche. He found his lane. I think he can be a valuable piece in a trade package. But I think if we chose to keep him and let him cook, that he will continue to grow into his role, where he could step in as a starter if needed, but really come in off the bench and give us good pop. I think I may see David Lee. I think he could be a David Lee, a critical piece to us in a championship run, giving critical rebounds, can plug in for starter minutes when needed, but he'll give you what you expect from him when he gets into the game. So I really think that would be a good NBA comparison. So David Lee would be Isaiah Hartenstein when he's fully cooked. Okay. Also, next hot off the grill is our guy, Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin really had a sneaky impact on this playoffs this year. I think that experience was important for him to have. But I really think at first he started out a little bit shaky, but then he found a little niche for himself as well. And he had opportunities where he did contribute. Whether or not the numbers reflected it is another thing. But I really think that his impact in certain games was felt. Once again, I really don't know if he's going to have enough time in the oven to be cooked. So that's going to be a decision on the team. But if we kept him and we found ways to get him minutes, and if fully cooked, I think that his ceiling with the right point guard can be an Amari Stoudemire New York edition. All right, not Amari Stoudemire in Phoenix, but a New York edition Amari Stoudemire. To utilize the pick and roll and the pick and pop, an ability to put pressure on the rim. So the NBA comparison when fully cooked for Obi Toppin is the New York Knicks version of Amari Stoudemire. And lastly, Quentin Grimes. So Quentin Grimes, and I know I'm leaving off Jericho Sims, but it's going to take a number of years for him to fully cook because he's completely raw. He's still in the package. So I want to say Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes, I think when fully cooked, I see a Joe Dumars. I see a Joe Dumars type of player, but a little bit more athletic Joe Dumars. The ability to hit that three-point shot, but at a higher clip, I think, than Joe Dumars. But just the ability to play offense and defense to the level needed to be able to win at a high level, Quentin Grimes is there. I know people look at his jump shot and know that and believe his jump shot is reminiscent of Allen Houston. That's been said before, and I agree. I've said it in the past as well. Pure form. But I really think he has so much more of a bag to open up in terms of his ability to drive the basketball to the rim, his vision in the open court and around the rim, and his ability to finish around the basket as well, including the three-point shot and including the ability to play defense. I just think Joe Dumars is a good comparison. If his role needs to expand, he needs to come back, be ready and prepared to take on a bigger role in this offense and with this organization. Honestly, I don't think that the young players will be prepared, the Obies, the IQs, the Grimes. I don't think any of them will be prepared to take a greater step up another level and a greater responsibility if Julius Randle is on the team.
I hop out, I start shooting. Bow, 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 bow.
He just doesn't invite that type of growth with him being in the environment. So there you have it. What say you? Knicks Daily Edition, letting them cook. This is what our NBA players, our NBA New York Knicks players will look like when fully cooked. Those are their player comparisons. So do me a favor. Where did I get it wrong? Leave in the comment section a player that you feel these players are going to turn into when fully cooked. All right? So there you have it. Keep this in mind. Same thing applies to life that applies to our team. If there's no struggle, there's no progress. But also keep this in mind. If we let them cook, we got next year. Sheer brilliance. This is Knicks Daily. Peace.